Whether you're a business owner or you have a 9 to 5 job that you're working for somebody else, have you ever felt that you're just not getting where you wanted to go in life? That you just can't figure out what is holding you back? Have you ever thought that maybe some stress is holding you back? Hi, I'm Christine Rothdeutsch, and I'm host of Make It Click. And today on the show, I am happy to have with me elite transformation coach, Teresa Lodato. Did I do that well?
You
You're
did. Thank you.
Italian?
Thank you so much for having me, Lodato.
Lodato. Well, let's have some fun here then, Teresa. So you are an elite transformation coach, and today we're talking about invisible stress. What do you invisible stress? Don't we all just recognize, like, oh my gosh, I'm all stressed out? Let's elaborate on this. What might people not be seeing in themselves?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I work with a lot of women business owners and women executives. And when I talk about stress, they immediately go to, oh, it's okay, I do yoga. Oh, it's okay, I've got a meditation practice, or I've just came back from a self-care retreat. And I'm like, yes, that is great. However, a lot of times as women, we forget about the invisible mental load that we carry. So many of us are not only, gosh, taking care of our, the items at work or in our businesses, but then we're also caring for children or aging parents. And no matter if we've got a fabulous spouse or a fabulous partner to help us out, generally it's us as women that are responsible for being the keepers of knowledge. By knowledge, I mean, how to get things done, the actual practical aspects of knowledge and experiences. But then we're also the keepers of wisdom, how to apply that knowledge and those experiences. And one of the best examples I can come up with is a mother who is, hands it off to her partner to go take their child to a birthday party. Well, it's great. The mother tells the partner, okay, you've got to have little Susie at the party at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, this Saturday. And the partner goes, great, takes the child to the birthday party, but then they don't know what the other child wants as a present. They don't know if it's a themed party. They don't know, the women, the mom is typically the one who knows the preferences, knows the dietary restrictions, knows, what the favorite things are for kids to do, or knows their favorite color. Like all this wisdom and knowledge that we're holding that doesn't get passed along. Or an example, gosh, I don't know how many times my husband, we've lived in this house for over 3 years. He'll come out and be like, where's my coffee cup? Where's, and it's like, same place it always is. It's in the cabinet or it's in the dishwasher. But it's things like this as women that it doesn't even cross our minds. The dentist, when so little Johnny needs to go do this, or even in the workplace. What team member is tasked? What is that particular team member's strengths? What is that particular, maybe a certain team member has something going on in their personal life, and it could be affecting how they show up on the team. Generally, as women business owners and executives, it's not only the personal stuff, but it's also the things at work. And that is what I speak about when I talk about invisible stress or that mental load, is all this extra information that we just carry as women because we're such good connectors with others. And it doesn't necessarily translate into this really boiled down perspective that, the men and the allies in our life could necessarily help, or even have other women who are allies who might not have that information. So we're carrying a lot in our lives, and it really impacts how we show up in the world and how we're able to balance and regulate our emotional regulation, our system, our healthy emotional regulation.
Yeah, I'm wondering. So, we think, oh, we're fine. Okay. So I was away last week, went away to visit my son in Denver, and I had to create lists. Now, I don't have any kids at home, but it's the cats, what has to be done with the cats. Here's all the instructions for the husband. And, it's like, all right, I do it every time and everything. But what might have been going on inside of me, and what is going on inside of women when we are carrying all this information and we think, it's just what we do. We're fine. What are we not seeing that's going on inside of us?
Well, think about your computer and, you open up a window and you ask your computer to do a task and the little wheel starts spinning, right? Chances are, like, if you've got one window open, you'll get to whatever page you're trying to get to super fast. However, when we have multiple windows open, we've got 8, 10, 15 windows open, that's when the wheel really starts spinning. And it's a similar thing what happens inside of us with, it's not so much the brain as the computer, but it's kind of a similar idea. When we have so many different things floating around in our heads, it's hard to keep track of what is really important now, because that's really what our brain is looking for. What is important to me right now, or what's going to keep me safe? What's going to keep me alive? And if it doesn't fall into one of those parameters, then chances are it's going to be out here in a different area, where our brain isn't necessarily going to take that information and act on it. And so I think how it impacts us not only is preventing us from actually taking action in a much more quick way, but also it moves us out of the present moment. We're no longer thinking about, or we are thinking about what we have to do or what we should have done, or, what has happened in the past. And it takes us out of that present moment. The present moment, as Eckhart Tolle, said back in 2009 when he crashed out into the world, the present moment is where everything happens. It's where we have full access to not only our emotional strengths, our intuition, but also all of our decision-making faculties. We have full access to our prefrontal cortex and higher levels of executive functioning. When we are in that present moment, we're powerful. We can handle everything because it's only what's in front of us right now. And so I think when it comes to invisible stress in women, it's kind of like having all those windows open. It slows down the computer. Well, it's a similar thing with us. We have all these tasks going on, and it actually slows down our ability to take action. And it could show up as overwhelm. It can show up as brain fog. It can show up as maybe eating, tending to eat a little bit more. And so maybe we're putting on weight, or maybe we're just not feeling great because we're, reaching for salt and sugar. So there are lots of different ways that it tends to show up. But generally, it's kind of just this overwhelmed feeling of exhaustion. Like even if we get a good night's sleep, we're not completely rested. So there are lots of different ways that you can bring awareness to it. But really what it's doing is just slowing everything down because we're too busy being out of the present moment.
Right. Well, that's very interesting. You said about being tired, not sleeping well at night. I was just at a women's group meeting yesterday, and somebody was mentioning again, oh, no, I didn't sleep last night. And I've heard this woman say it multiple times. So I hope she's listening to this episode of Make a Click, that maybe the stress in her life is causing that. Yeah. So okay. So, we're really kind of overdoing it. Our brains are, well, I'll say we can't multitask. There's no such thing as multitask. Like, see, the brain can't function that way. The brain can only deal with one thing at a time. So we are doing disservice. So would you say also that maybe one of the things that happens is that maybe, a couple of years go by and all of a sudden you wake up and you say, oh my God, where did all this weight come from? Oh my God. I forget what I did a year ago. It's like everything's just flashing by, so is that kind of a signal that maybe, there was some invisible stress going on there and I need to take a look at this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point, is that if you can't remember what you ate for lunch, you probably weren't fully present and mindful while you were eating lunch. Because when you're fully present and mindful, your brain is able to just quickly access that information and retain those memories in a very specific place. Whereas when we aren't present, when we aren't mindful, when we're doing multiple things, it makes it hard because the brain doesn't know what's important in the moment. What am I supposed to be remembering in this moment? Is it that to turn on the water? That's why the brain automates so many functions, is so that we don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
But then there's that opportunity that we miss for deeper connection in our relationships. If you've got children, how many times has your child come in and said, mommy, 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 I want to tell you this, or daddy, 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 I want to tell you about this. And it doesn't seem like it's very important. Oh, I found this clover outside. Do you think a fairy left it or a leprechaun left it? It doesn't seem like very important. However, when we're in the present moment, we can recognize the need for the child to connect. Or if we're in the team space, when someone shares something with us, instead of just bypassing it, doing an emotional flyby, we can recognize, hey, you know what? This is a bid for connection. Let me go ahead and respond to that person. So I think it shows up in that inability to remember what happened in a particular moment. I can't remember what I was doing last Tuesday at lunch. But I think the more important thing, how it impacts us, is by missing those subtle signals that we give as a social beings to connect and go deeper in relationship and really form that intimacy and connection. And I think this is why women especially, there's a growing population of us feeling lonelier than ever, because we're not experiencing that intimacy in our relationship, that deep connection, whether it's at work or whether it's in our personal lives.
Yeah. And so just a little story on my part, and then I wanted to ask you about your backstory. But talking about that, being present, everything, I just remember years ago going to the Philadelphia Flower Show with my daughter and taking pictures. And we're leaving, and I was like, I didn't really experience the flower show. So that's kind of this, I think that's kind of the same area of not being fully present. And oh my goodness, I think the whole world is guilty of that.
Absolutely. With selfie nation, I know it's we're always reaching for the phone to like memorize, but we forget to tune into our senses. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? How am I feeling in my body? And I think that's another aspect of this stress, this invisible stress, is that we disconnect when we're in those lower vibrations of emotions. We disconnect from our bodies and how we're feeling. There's a great image. Dr. David Hawkins from the Institute of Noetic Sciences has a map of consciousness, and it basically shows or demonstrates the different frequencies of different emotions. And Dr. Masuro Emoto did a big study on this as well, as far as like Messages from Water was his book. But it talked about, samples of water, and when you expose it to different emotions, how that emotion, when it's frozen, shows up in a different crystalline structure. I don't want to get too deep into that, but the point is, you can look at either one of those things, but the fact is, number one, we're made up primarily of water, 75, 85% water. I can't remember what the exact number is. So our bodies are going to be impacted by those frequencies. Number two, when we're in those lower frequency emotions, we're not going to be able to resonate. We're not going to be able to connect. We're not going to be able to restore our health. We're not going to be able to balance our metabolism. Our hormones are going to be off, because when we're in those lower emotions, those lower frequencies, we're actually in a stress response. And so our body is releasing things like norepinephrine and cortisol that, are kind of, those hormones are driving what's going on in our body. And so we're not able to feel into that place until we calm down and shut down those hormones.
Yeah. Now, so I don't want to take an hour to get your story, but I just wanted to share with the audience that you didn't come into this and say, oh, I think I'm just going to start studying, stress and how we can. You yourself, your background is in financial services. Financial services to this now. So can you briefly explain to the audience that you've been through this, and you've come through and discovered, you've studied to learn to get yourself to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I was in financial services for over 20 years. Was a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch, and then also worked in private banking and investments at Merrill, as well as a few other financial firms. But because of the demands of the job, just, doing everything that I did, especially when I was in private banking investments. I was waking up at 3:45 in the morning so I could go to the gym and work out before I had to be in San Francisco before market hours at 6:30. Worked a full day, had to come home, pick my son up from daycare, you know, get him dinner, get him bed, and it was just wash and repeat. So I was probably living on like maybe 6.5 hours sleep. I need at least 8 for my body to function, to function properly. That all led, in addition to some other things. I was in a really difficult marriage at the time. I've had migraines my whole life. I had a lot of relational trauma when I was younger. All of those things contributed to how I respond to stress. It all contributed to me being in this constant state of stress. And because of that, between the pressures of the job, the pressures of being a mom and really kind of doing a lot and all the invisible stress, it led me to develop a rare and serious form of migraine that causes stroke-like symptoms. And it ended my career. I mean, I was blacking out, experiencing stroke-like symptoms. I was in the hospital for 5 days while they tried to figure out what it was. Like I said, it ended my career. And, it really was this opportunity. It was similar to COVID and the pandemic, this opportunity where we're going full bore and then all of a sudden the world stops. That's kind of was my experience. And from there, I recognized, at first I thought, oh, I just need to change careers. That's all that it is. It's not about me. It's about what I'm doing. And decided I was going to study psychology in graduate school. So I went on to do that, studying counseling psychology. And during that time of really working on myself and doing the healing that was really necessary, unpacking everything that I'd been repressing for so long, I realized, wow, it's not really about the career change. It's really about the change that I am being offered, this invitation for me to heal, to really get in a place where I was healthy, not only in my body, but also in my mind and my spirit. And I think through that process, studying neuroscience, studying, relational trauma, I've got all kinds of certifications. I've studied with Harvard Business Law School, about negotiation and even using elements of that in my work now with, people that have experienced relational trauma or co-parenting with narcissistic people. All of these elements bring me right back to the stress, bring me right back to understanding these different emotional frequencies that makes it so powerful, because once we understand what's going on in our bodies, then we know which levers to pull and which ones to push so that we are adapted, so that we're living a fully aligned life, which when we are living in that present moment, living that aligned life, living our lives by our values, then we are in charge. We are empowered rather than being the victim in our lives where we're kind of suffering, going, I don't know why I'm so exhausted all the time. I don't know why I'm putting on weight, why my skin's breaking out. All these things that we experience as women that are telltale signs that are saying, hey, you know what? It's not about just slowing down. It's about really healing and doing that transformation work so that we can be in a place where we have more clarity, we have confidence, we don't have decision fatigue, we're actually powerful decision makers. And so that's a little bit about my story, how I got to what I'm doing now and why I'm so passionate about it. I don't want women to be burning out from their careers. I want women to be doing what they love to do and be successful at it and learn how to be sustainable, because that's the element that leaves out. Lots of us women, we can push through and accomplish a lot, create all kinds of success. I was highly successful. It wasn't sustainable. And I think that's what's really important.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, Teresa. If our audience wants to stay in touch with you, or do you have something special for them?
Yeah,
that
I
you want to
do.
share?
I created a quiz. It's the Her Power type quiz. And I love when people take this. I've had, I don't know how many thousands of people take it. And I always get feedback how accurate it is. But more importantly, it tells you a little bit about your stress type and it tells you about how you communicate with others. And so once you understand, like, your little subtle ways of being to embrace your power, gosh, so much more can happen. So I encourage anyone to take the quiz, figure out what their type is, and then if you have any questions, you can always get on a call with me, a quick 15-minute call, and I can walk you through how you can use that information to better your life, to recognize the invisible stress and to become more empowered with confidence, grace, and clarity.
Awesome. And the audience can go to teresaladato.net/her-type-quiz. And this will also be in the show notes for the audience to get that also. Again, this has been a fantastic conversation. I hope our audience has gained some insight into what can be preventing them from really living the life that they, had envisioned. But I do have one more question for you, Teresa. And that is about you and your business of when you decided to help women to go into the coaching. Is there something that you can say, oh my goodness, this has really helped make it click in my business? Because, starting out in corporate and then saying, oh, I'm going to be a business owner. We all know it's not that simple. Is there something that comes to mind for you that you can say, oh, that made it click?
Yeah, I think, obviously burning out from my career was kind of the big event. However, it was when I was studying psychology in graduate school that I realized how we get in the way, how things that happen to us, how it gets in the way of relationships. And so I did a TED Talk recently, just about 3 weeks ago, that talks about how to stop obsessing over what other people are thinking. And in the TED Talk, I talk about 3 tips that you can use to really help improve your relationships. But most what we do a lot of the times is we tell ourselves a story about what someone else is thinking about us,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not it's not even accurate most of the time. In fact, I would probably say like 95% of the time, it's not accurate. And so that creates also levels of stress, because if I think that you're thinking that I'm just a dork and don't really belong here, then that's going to affect how I show up. I'm not going to be as confident. Whereas if I have somebody and I tell myself the story that they know that I'm an expert, they've seen the data, they've read testimonials, etc., then that helps me stand in my power and go, yeah, you know what? That is truth. Here's the data, here's the analytics. And it gives me that confidence to step forward into who I am and what I'm trying to share. So I think it was that realization in graduate school of, oh my gosh, we do this all the time. Even I do this. Even to this day, I have to monitor my thoughts because it's so natural for us to have this negativity bias in our brains that we need to be aware of it. Well, we get to be aware of it. And in choosing to be aware of it, then we become empowered so that we can have better relationships, live more in the present moment and be able to really, be fully aligned and fulfill our purpose in this life.
Very good point, Teresa. Thank you so much for that. Again, I hope the audience has gained a lot of insight on this topic. Thank you so much for being here today on Make It Click, Teresa.
Thank you so much for having me.